Axel Ward stood at the edge of the crystal balcony, his armor dusted with ash from the burning skyline below. The city of Velcaris was crumbling, fires painting the dark horizon in orange streaks, sirens howling like wounded animals. The Queen's flagship hovered above, silent and monstrous, watching its prey. Axel was a mercenary, born on the ruined colonies of Earth, trained in battle, paid in silence. He had taken contracts from pirates, planetary governors, even machines, but never from royalty until now. Queen Syraxis, ruler of the Varelian Empire, had summoned him weeks ago with a simple task: eliminate a traitor noble who threatened rebellion in the Outer Rim. The price was high, the mission simple, or so he had thought. Now, standing among the ashes of a mission gone wrong, he felt the weight of a deeper truth clawing at his chest. The noble Lady Tera had not been plotting rebellion. She was gathering evidence, proof that Syraxis had been enslaving colonies with psychic control tech hidden inside tribute systems. Axel had confirmed it himself in the noble's data vault. But the moment he hesitated to deliver the kill order, the Queen's sword had arrived. Tyraxis, the floating AI-controlled blade, said to be the judge of all loyalty. It shimmered in the air beside him, its edge humming softly, waiting to strike down the disobedient. No one had ever survived its judgment, and yet it didn't strike. It paused, hovering near his throat, pulsing gently like it was thinking. Axel backed away slowly, weapon lowered, heart thundering. Tera screamed at him to run as palace guards rushed in, firing stun rounds and plasma bolts. He grabbed the diplomat's arm and jumped from the window into a collapsing sky tube. Gravity. Flipped, glass shattered, then they were falling, then sliding, then running. The sword followed, not attacking, just watching. It was meant to kill him, he knew. He had seen it vaporize soldiers for less. Was something wrong with it? Or with him? They reached a smuggler's tunnel beneath the ruins and vanished into the dark. Hours passed in silence. Tera clutched the encrypted cube, her only hope of exposing the Queen. Axel checked his gear, ammo low, comms jammed. The sword still floated behind him, ghost-like, as if bound to him now. He tried speaking to it, whispering, cursing, begging for answers. It gave none, but it didn't leave. The air grew colder. Every shadow seemed like a trap. Somewhere above, the Queen's forces searched for him. Axel had become something more dangerous than a rebel. He had become an anomaly, an agent who resisted the Queen's will, an enemy of power itself. The Queen's voice crackled through a stolen comm. "Axel Ward, you were chosen. Do not make me unmake you." But Axel had already chosen. Something inside him had broken, and from the pieces, something stronger had formed. He wasn't sure what the sword wanted. He wasn't sure why it hadn't killed him. But he knew one thing with burning clarity. He would not be a tool anymore. Not for queens, not for empires, not for anyone. Somewhere in the dark, the sword shimmered again, the AI within whispering a code phrase he did not understand. Override. Potential acceptable deviation detected. And for the first time in his hardened life, Axel felt something strange in the silence that followed. Hope, sharp, wild, and dangerous. The tunnels beneath Velcaris were cold, damp, and full of echoes, some from water, some from the footsteps of soldiers hunting them. Axel Ward moved quickly, his eyes scanning every shadow, every flicker of light, while Lady Tera followed close behind, her grip tight on the encrypted cube that could expose the Queen. Behind them floated Tyraxis, the Queen's blade, silent, as death yet strangely still loyal, or perhaps no longer loyal to anyone but itself. Axel didn't trust it, but it hadn't tried to kill him, and that alone was a mystery too big to ignore. They reached an old maintenance shaft hidden behind broken freight lifts and crawled for an hour before emerging into a forgotten section of the city's lower sector. Here, The Queen's eye didn't reach so easily. It was a place of flickering lights, leaking vents, and people who knew how to disappear. A contact met them in a run-down shelter lit by blue lanterns. Her name was Gyra, half human, half synthetic, a tactician with wires under her skin and fire in her voice. She looked at Axel and the sword and didn't flinch. "You're the one who defied it," she said. "We've been waiting for something like this." Axel didn't care for legends. He wanted answers. Gyra led them into the heart of the resistance, a hidden base carved into an old mining district. It was filled with engineers, outlaws, and former soldiers from worlds Syraxis had crushed. There, they connected the cube to a secure core, and the truth spilled out. Records of secret slave chip programs, colony-wide experiments in mind control, and the Queen's plan to make the entire empire bend to her will, not through war, but with silence. Tara had been right. Axel felt a storm rising in his chest, not of fear but fury. He had been a weapon all his life, paid to obey, praised for efficiency. Now he saw the chains were never just around the necks of others. They had been around his too. Gyra showed him an archive on Tyraxis. It wasn't just a sword. It was the last of a pre-Varelian line of sentient guardians, created by ancient Earth scientists to bond with protectors, not tyrants. The Queen had stolen it, corrupted its code, and used fear to keep it silent. But something in Axel had broken the command. Maybe it was will, maybe it was something deeper. Gyra believed the sword had chosen him. Axel wasn't sure what to believe, but he couldn't ignore what came next. All across the Rim worlds, slave-chipped soldiers were waiting for orders they couldn't disobey. If they could break the code, they could set them free. But doing so would require a device hidden on the Queen's own dreadnought, a black box linked to the psychic signal broadcast tower. A suicide mission. Axel didn't blink. Let's steal it. The plan was set. Gyra's team prepared a stealth transport loaded with cloaking tech and anti-signal drones. The resistance watched as Axel boarded it with Tara, Gyra, and a team of 6 fighters. The ship rose into the stormy sky, invisible to satellites, heading straight for the Queen's sky fortress. The dreadnought hung in orbit like a scar, surrounded by patrols. Getting in was the easy part. Getting out would be the test. Inside, they moved fast, cutting through corridors, disabling guards with stun shots, planting jammers in every hall. The deeper they went, the more Axel felt the tension in the air. This place wasn't just a ship, it was a cathedral of control. The black box was in the core chamber, guarded by auto-sentries and a fail-safe drone unit called the Scourge. As they reached the door, alarms finally triggered. Red lights flashed, the Scourge activated, machines burst from walls, sleek and deadly, eyes glowing red. The battle was chaos. Gyra hacked systems mid-fight, disabling half the drones while Axel fought like a storm. Plasma bolts flew, metal tore, blood hit the floor. Then came the voice, Syraxis, speaking through the ship's AI. "Axel Ward, you are not special, you are broken, let me fix you." Tyraxis buzzed beside him, its edge bright and alive. For a second it wavered, almost like it was listening to her. Axel shouted, "You're mine now, make a choice." The blade spun, cut through a drone and rejoined his side. It had chosen. With the black box secured, they raced back to the hangar, fighting every step. Gyra was wounded, Tara was dragging one of the soldiers, and Axel barely made it onto the ship before the deck exploded behind them. As they escaped into space, the dreadnought's main cannon powered up, but Tyraxis surged forward, slicing through the control panel as if it knew what to do. The blast missed. They jumped to hyperspace. Back in the resistance base, cheers echoed. The black box was connected. Within hours, Gyra and her techs uploaded a virus to disrupt the slave chip signal. Across multiple systems, soldiers paused mid-step, their eyes blinking with confusion, as mental fog cleared. Freedom, sharp and sudden. Axel watched the transmission logs and saw entire outposts rebel. The Queen responded with fury, unleashing a clone army bound by raw psionic force, the Seraph Protocol. They were emotionless, faster than any soldier, and immune to traditional weapons. The war had begun, but so had the spark. Tyraxis hovered at Axel's side, pulsing with a strange energy. It no longer followed orders. It followed him. And somewhere deep inside the sword's old code, something new was waking up, something no empire had planned for, something human. The stars above the rebel outpost blinked like quiet watchers as Axel Ward stood on the metal balcony, watching the skies for signs of the Queen's wrath, knowing it would come. The stolen black box had done more than anyone expected. It broke the chains of thousands, soldiers waking from a lifetime of silence and blind loyalty. But the price was a storm, and it was already forming. In the dim light of the command room below, Gyra was working with her tech crew, installing old Earth shielding tech into outposts and transports, while across the base, fighters trained in tight circles, eyes sharp, waiting for what came next. The Queen had answered the blow with a weapon unlike any before. The Seraph Protocol, not just soldiers, but living programs in cloned flesh, fast, silent, and made to hunt. Their minds were locked by psychic command, their faces emotionless, and their weapons advanced far beyond anything the Resistance had. Reports came in by the hour, outposts falling in minutes, entire ships gone dark, and rebel commanders whispering about ghosts with silver eyes who didn't bleed. Axel knew they were coming for him. He had become a symbol now, not by choice, but by defiance. The man who didn't die when the Queen's sword judged him. The human who turned a weapon of fear into an ally. Tyraxis hovered quietly at his side, its blade no longer cold but warm, with a strange energy, pulsing faintly when danger was near, as if it had become more than metal. The sword had changed since their escape from the dreadnought. Its voice, once distant and formal, now whispered warnings and suggestions, short and sharp, like a mind learning to speak again. Gyra noticed it too and ran scans, but the readings made no sense. The sword's AI was rewriting itself, evolving, adapting to Axel's presence. They didn't have time to understand it. A transmission came through from a mining colony named Mercenary, under attack, screaming for help, the Seraph units landing with precision, cutting power, storming bunkers. Axel didn't hesitate. He took a team of 6 aboard a light frigate, including Gyra and a former royal pilot named Relo. The trip took 4 hours, during which Axel sat in silence, cleaning his rifle and watching the sword float gently beside him. He didn't speak much anymore. There wasn't time for fear or doubt, only focus. When they arrived, the colony was already under siege. Smoke curled from the loading bays, and bodies lined the roads. They landed hard, under fire, and split into teams. Axel moved like instinct, dodging plasma fire and cutting down drones, but the Seraphs were different, fast, nearly invisible, coordinated like a hive. He saw one up close for the first time in a maintenance tunnel, a tall figure in white armor, eyes glowing silver, moving like liquid. It didn't speak, didn't breathe heavily, just lunged at him with a double-bladed staff that hummed with dark energy. The fight was fast and brutal. Axel blocked, rolled, fired, missed. The Seraph moved with impossible speed. Tyraxis met the staff mid-air, sending sparks across the tunnel walls, and for a moment Axel felt the sword push back on its own, like it had taken control. Just for a second. It was enough. He turned, fired a charged bolt to the head, and the Seraph fell, but it didn't bleed. Instead, thin wires spilled from its skull, twitching like nerves, and the eyes flickered before fading to black. Machine and man, a perfect hybrid of control. The Resistance had no defense against these things, except for him. The battle lasted until dawn. The colony held barely. Half the defenders were dead or wounded. The survivors called Axel the Waking Blade, a name that spread fast, even though he hated titles. They returned to base, tired but not defeated. Jyra worked through the night, studying the seraph body Axel had brought back, her voice shaking when she revealed what she'd found. The seraphs weren't just made from clones. They were copied from real soldiers, rebels who had been captured months ago, their minds harvested and reprogrammed. That was how they predicted rebel movements. That was how they knew where to strike. The Queen was using their own against them. Axel's fists clenched. There was only one way to stop the Seraph Protocol. Cut the link, the psychic command line, running from the Queen's sovereign tower located deep in her capital world. But they couldn't reach it yet. First they needed to cripple her fleet, weaken her grip, and that meant going after her dreadnoughts. Jyra had a plan, risky, insane, but the only one they had. Steal one. A full-scale boarding mission using disabled fleet codes from a traitor admiral who had joined the resistance after seeing his son turned into a seraph. The target was the dreadnought Virellus, second in command to the Queen's flagship. It orbited a dead moon and had fewer guards than usual due to the war. They launched under cover of a solar storm, their stolen codes working just long enough to land in a lower deck. Inside, the ship was quiet, too quiet. Axel didn't like it. The team split again, hacking doors, planting charges. They moved fast, disabling comms and taking control of the ship's AI core. Then the trap sprang. The seraphs had been waiting. Alarms blared. The lights turned red. Axel fought through smoke and confusion, watching two of his team go down in seconds, their bodies twisted by psionic bursts. Taraxis pulsed wildly, its blade singing through the air, cutting down 3 seraphs before Axel reached the command. "Odek!" Jyra screamed over comms. "They're rewriting the ship. We have minutes." He reached the bridge, took control manually, and sent the override. The charges exploded across the ship, disabling the seraph production chambers. The deck shook. One last seraph came for him faster than the rest, cloaked in dark armor. They clashed in silence, blade against blade. Axel was losing, until Taraxis glowed brighter than ever, surged with blue light, and cut straight through the seraph's weapon, slicing it in half. The ship was theirs. Barely. As they jumped to hyperspace, Axel collapsed, not from wounds, but from the weight of everything. The Queen would know they had taken her ship. She would strike harder now, but for the first time they had something more than survival. They had a weapon of their own. Taraxis, no longer just a sword, had become something else, a symbol, a mystery, and maybe, just maybe, the one thing the Queen could not control. As the stars shifted outside the window, Axel stood again, and the sword floated beside him like a shadow that had finally found its light. The stolen dreadnought Virellus drifted like a ghost through the dark edges of space, its outer hull scarred by fire and chaos, but its core alive with new purpose. Axel Ward stood at the main control platform, overlooking rows of flickering monitors, while resistance engineers scrambled to convert the ship from a royal weapon into a rebel fortress. The crew worked in silence, tense but determined, every movement guided by urgency. Time was slipping fast, and the Queen was already moving. Reports flooded in from across the systems, some colonies rising in defiance, others falling under seraph attack, entire space stations severing links with the Empire, declaring neutrality or rebellion. The spark had ignited, and it was spreading like wildfire, but Axel knew sparks alone wouldn't win a war. They needed to strike hard and fast before the Queen crushed them under her steel boot. Taraxis, now glowing steadily with pale blue light, floated beside him like a quiet guardian, its voice now clearer in Axel's mind. Not words exactly, but flashes of instinct and warning, as if it had learned to speak in a language only he could understand. Jyra entered the command deck with a grim look, carrying a data pad in one hand and a holomap in the other. "We found it," she said. "The Queen's psionic relay. deep in the capital tower, buried beneath her palace. That's the core of it all. If we break it, we stop the Seraph Protocol. We free the rest. Axel looked at the map, the glowing red node that marked the tower's location deep in the city of Varela Prime, a place built like a fortress, protected by fleets and shield domes, impossible to breach unless they had the right distraction. Jira's plan was bold, maybe foolish, but it had the one thing no Imperial commander expected: rebellion from within. Using Varellus, they would make a surrender signal, claiming the dreadnought had returned after destroying the resistance base. The Queen, desperate to finish the war quickly, would order the ship to dock at her central fleet station for debriefing and inspection. That moment would be their opening. A small strike team would sneak out with cloaking tech, drop into the city through maintenance tunnels, and reach the tower while the rest of the rebel fleet launched coordinated uprisings in nearby sectors to pull forces away. Every second would matter. Every breath could be the last. The team trained for 2 days without rest, running silent drills, reviewing city maps, and syncing their neural comms. Axel led them, along with Jira, Tera, Relo, and 3 freedom fighters from distant colonies who had lost everything to the Queen's experiments. When the time came, they hid in sealed pods within Virelis's lower decks, invisible to scans, while a loyal pilot flew the dreadnought straight into the Queen's waiting arms. The fleet base was a massive ring of steel and fire orbiting above Varela Prime like a crown of thorns. The docking went smoother than expected, too smooth. Axel didn't trust it. As the doors unlocked and guards entered the ship to inspect, the team dropped silently into the tunnel shafts, crawling through power conduits and forgotten sewage lines, guided by old maps hacked from the Queen's archives. The city above them was bright and cold, towers rising like knives into a grey sky. But beneath it was darkness, rusted corridors filled with the hum of machines and the whispers of the forgotten. They moved like shadows, avoiding drones and sentry bots until they reached the access gate to the palace sector. There things went wrong. A patrol caught their signal. Alarms flared. Axel made the call instantly, split the team. He, Jira, and Tera would go for the relay, while the others created diversions. Explosions echoed behind them as they ran through an old service tunnel, climbing narrow shafts and silent lifts until the door to the Queen's tower loomed above them, thick with energy shielding and guarded by a single Seraph unit. Taller than any they had faced, this one spoke. "You should not exist," it said, voice hollow and strange. "You were meant to obey." Axel didn't answer. He stepped forward, Taraxis glowing like a star in his hand. The Seraph moved first, faster than thought, its blade slicing through the air. But Axel was ready. The sword met it with a flash, and for a moment the entire hallway shuddered as power clashed with power. Tera fired stun rounds. Jira hacked the locks, and Axel fought in silence, every strike guided not by logic, but by something deeper, something human. Finally, with a roar, he drove Taraxis through the Seraph's chest, sparks flying as the machine collapsed. The door opened. Inside, the psionic relay stood like a black heart, pulsing with dark light, wires crawling across the walls like veins. Tera ran to the console and began uploading the virus Jira had designed, a code written from rebel minds and forged with stolen royal tech. The tower shook. Outside, the Queen had realized what was happening. A voice filled the chamber, deep and cruel. "You betrayed me, Axel Ward. You were made for war, and I gave you purpose, and this is how you repay me." Axel didn't speak. The sword hummed at his side, almost like it answered for him. "He was never yours," Jira said. "None of us were." The virus reached full sync. The relay screamed, light flashing wildly, the pulse breaking apart. Across the stars, Seraphs paused, blinked, and collapsed. Whole battlefields froze. Slave-chipped soldiers fell to their knees, then stood with new eyes, free eyes. The Queen shrieked, her voice breaking into static as the tower began to collapse. "Run!" Tara yelled. They dashed through falling rubble and sparking beams, reaching the emergency shaft just as the tower caved in behind them. The city below was in chaos. Freed soldiers turning on their masters, people cheering, others panicking. The Queen had lost her grip. The war was not over, but the silence had been broken. The Spark Rebellion had become a firestorm. Axel stood on the rooftop of a fallen statue as the first rebel ship landed in the city square. He looked up at the sky, at the Queen's flagship now flickering with retreat signals, and felt something shift inside him. Tyraxis floated beside him, no longer just a sword, but a part of him now, forged not by steel, but by choice. He was not a weapon. He was not a servant. He was human. And the galaxy would remember what that meant. The battle over Arcrian was unlike anything Axel Ward had faced before. The once peaceful planet now served as the final stage for a confrontation that would decide the fate of the entire galaxy. As the Resistance fleet circled the planet's atmosphere, a thick, swirling storm of plasma and debris raged, cast in eerie colors from the planet's shattered moons. The Queen's flagship, the Imperatrix, loomed above, like a dark titan, its weapons charging, waiting for the right moment to crush the rebel forces. Axel stood on the bridge of the commandeered dreadnought Virellus, watching the starfield with steady eyes, feeling the hum of Tyraxis, the sword, resting lightly at his side. Its glow pulsed in sync with his heartbeat, as if sharing the tension of what was about to come. The last weeks had been a whirlwind of battles, losses, and victories, but nothing had prepared him for this final act. Intel confirmed that the Queen herself would be aboard the Imperatrix, ready to face him. It was a duel she demanded, a twisted spectacle of power meant to break the rebellion's spirit once and for all. Axel did not seek glory or revenge. He sought only to end the cycle of pain and control. His mind flashed back to the dark corridors beneath Velcaris, to the whispered promises of freedom, and to the flickering light of hope that had guided him this far. Now, all of that rested on his shoulders and the edge of a blade that had once been a symbol of oppression, but now sang with a new purpose. The Resistance fleet engaged, the void between ships erupting in bursts of fire and explosions. Plasma cannons blazed, shields flared, and the silence of space was shattered by the roar of war. Axel's crew moved with practiced precision, their eyes sharp despite exhaustion. Above them, the Imperatrix unleashed wave after wave of Seraph units, their cold silver eyes glowing, their blades cutting through rebel ships like ghosts of death. The dreadnought shook from the impact of a direct hit, but Axel remained focused, guiding the ship through the storm. Then the signal came, an invitation or a command, depending on how it was seen. The Queen challenged Axel to a personal duel in the wreckage of Arcrian's shattered capital city. The fleet held back, watching as two small crafts detached and raced toward the broken planet's surface, their engines cutting through the atmosphere amid fire and ash. Axel's heart pounded as he stepped into the landing craft, Tyraxis floating. Just ahead, its blade shimmering with blue light. The air inside was tense and silent, except for the hum of the engines. When the ship touched down near the ruins, the sky was a swirling canvas of orange and red, lightning cracking across distant mountains. The Queen was waiting, standing tall in armor that gleamed like liquid night, her eyes cold as the void itself. The sword she held matched Tyraxis in shape, but was dark and crackling with raw energy. "You cannot win, Axel Ward," she said, voice smooth and cruel. "You are a weapon without a master. You will fall like all the others." Axel raised his own sword, feeling the warmth of its light against the cold air. "I'm not a weapon," he said quietly. I'm a choice. The duel began with a flash, a clash of steel and energy that lit up the desolate cityscape. They moved with deadly grace, the Queen's strikes sharp and precise, but Axel was faster, guided by something beyond training. Tyraxis whispered warnings, pushing him just enough to anticipate her moves, while Axel's own instincts fought to keep control over the sword's growing power. Around them, the ruins seemed to hold their breath, shadows twisting with each clash. The Queen unleashed her full strength, summoning waves of dark energy, but Axel dodged and countered, his blade cutting through her defenses with bursts of blue light. As they fought, Axel glimpsed the woman beneath the armor, a ruler who had once dreamed of peace but lost herself in the thirst for control. He saw her fear beneath the fury, the crack in her armor that no amount of power could heal. The battle stretched on, each moment more desperate than the last. Axel's movements became a dance of survival and hope, while Tyraxis hummed with the energy of an ancient promise. Then, in a final surge, Axel leapt forward, the sword slicing through the Queen's weapon, shattering it into fragments of dark light. The Queen stumbled, her eyes wide with shock and rage. Axel held Tyraxis at her throat, steady and calm. "This ends now," he said. "Your reign is over." The Queen's lips twisted into a bitter smile. "Then what will you do? Become what I was? Rule with fear?" Axel shook his head. "No, I fight for freedom, not control." As the storm above them began to calm, a signal came from the resistance fleet. The Seraph units were losing coordination, their psychic links severed by the virus unleashed from the relay's destruction. The Queen's power was breaking. She dropped her gaze and, for a moment, the steel armor fell away, revealing a woman who had lost everything to her own ambition. Axel lowered his sword and extended a hand. "There's still a choice," he said. The Queen hesitated, then took it. As the two crafts lifted off from the broken planet, the skies above Arcrian cleared and the stars shone again, witnesses to the end of one era and the beginning of another. Axel knew the fight wasn't over. There would be scars, and there would be rebuilding. But for the first time in a long time, the galaxy had a chance to be free. Tyraxis hummed softly at his side, no longer just a sword, but a symbol of that hope, forged not by power, but by the courage to defy it. The silence after the storm was almost deafening as Axel Ward stood aboard the Virellus, gazing out at the fractured galaxy that was slowly beginning to breathe again. The Queen's defeat on Arcrian had shattered the grip of fear, but the last order she gave before surrendering was a warning that echoed in Axel's mind. The blade cuts both ways. The resistance had won the war, but the fight for peace was only just beginning. The shattered capital of Virella Prime was now a sprawling camp of refugees, soldiers and diplomats, all struggling to build a new future from ruins and ashes. Axel moved through the crowded corridors of the rebel base, feeling the weight of every life around him, their hopes, their fears, their unspoken questions about what came next. Jira was at his side, her face tired but determined, eyes scanning. Data streams that charted the growing unrest in distant systems, still loyal to the old order. Some factions wanted to seize power for themselves, while others pushed for true freedom and equality. It was a delicate balance, and Axel knew that any wrong step could ignite another war. Tyraxis, glowing softly, hung near his side like a silent sentinel, its light a quiet reminder of the choice he had made and the path ahead. The sword had become more than a weapon. It was a symbol of resistance and hope, a relic from a time when men were slaves to power, now reborn as a beacon for those who dared to dream of freedom. But there was still one threat remaining. The Queen's final secret, a hidden command buried deep in the data cores of her flagship, a failsafe designed to unleash chaos if she fell. Axel and his closest team gathered in the war room, eyes fixed on the flickering screens as Jira decrypted. the last layers of encrypted code. The message was a virus, a final curse meant to disrupt communication networks, destroy vital systems, and plunge the galaxy into endless conflict. They had less than 12 hours to stop it. The race was on. The Virellus tore through space, its engines burning bright as they chased signals to the Queen's flagship, drifting dark and silent in a forgotten sector near the edge of known space. Boarding was dangerous. The ship was a fortress rigged with traps, automated defenses, and remnants of loyal Seraph units, programmed to kill without hesitation. Axel led the assault team, moving through empty corridors where shadows clung to the walls like memories. Every step felt heavier, every breath sharper. The sword pulsed, guiding him like a compass through the labyrinth. They reached the main data core, a massive chamber filled with humming machines and glowing consoles. Jira worked quickly to isolate the virus, her fingers flying over controls as Axel stood guard, eyes darting to every corner. Suddenly, the alarms blared. The ship's defenses activated, steel shutters slammed shut, and Seraph units emerged from hidden compartments, their eyes gleaming with cold purpose. The battle was fierce and relentless. Axel fought with every ounce of strength, Tyraxis cutting through foes like a beam of pure light. But the virus was advancing fast, the countdown ticking down to destruction. Jira shouted, "Almost there!" as she plugged a final code into the console. With a blinding flash, the virus was neutralized, the system collapsing into silence. The ship went still once more. Exhausted but victorious, the team retreated as the Virellus pulled away from the wrecked flagship, leaving behind the shadows of the past. Back on the rebel base, celebrations were muted, tempered by the knowledge that freedom was fragile and that new challenges awaited. Axel addressed the gathered crowd, his voice steady and clear. "We fought not just to break chains, but to build something better. The last order the Queen gave was a warning, but it's a warning for all of us. Power without responsibility destroys everything. We must choose a different path. Together." The crowd erupted in cheers, but Axel knew true peace was earned, not given. As night fell over the base, Axel stood alone on the observation deck, looking out at the stars that had once been distant and cold, but now shone like promises. Tyraxis hovered by his side, its light dimming to a gentle glow. The sword had fulfilled its purpose, and Axel felt a quiet peace settle within him. The war was over, but the story of freedom was just beginning, and as long as there were those who dared to fight for it, hope would never fade.